Here we go. Okay, sorry. Mic was off, but I think it's on now. If you don't hear me, please let me know. But I think we're good. Everybody, good morning on this Erev Shavuot, the day before the holiday of Shavuot, which is the day that we celebrate the giving of the Torah. Let's start with a bracha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol niyeh bidvaro. If you have your own coffee, I hope you made a blessing as well. And if not, I hope you answered amen. Let's give a little tzedakah to elicit blessing to today's Torah class. And again, I hope you hear me. So, I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. As we are about to celebrate the holiday of Shavuot, I want to repeat what I say, I believe, every single year, of why this is the most important holiday. Because if you want to evaluate the importance of something or somebody, you have to, one of the ways to evaluate that is by assessing whether the company, the organism, the community can do without it. And if it could do without it, that means it's not, of course, critical to that entity. So let's say, God forbid, somebody loses a finger. That's terrible. It's a terrible tragedy as a result of injury and so on. But the human being, the person, can continue to live a fairly normal life. Let's say, God forbid, someone loses an arm. That's a little bit more tragic, a little more severe, a little more impactful, of course, and it makes life a lot more difficult. We had here several years ago a member of the IDF, in fact, a lone soldier who volunteered to be part of the IDF and sadly lost his arm defending our nation and so on. And he nevertheless went back to the army, but he spoke about the struggles of losing an arm. But life continues. But what happens if, God forbid, someone loses their heart? You can't continue. You don't exist. You're a person that, God forbid, their heart is lost. Then, so that tells you that a heart, of course, is critical, indispensable to the life of that human being, and so on. Quite simple, not complicated. Same thing in a company, right? When you have a business and you want to evaluate someone's importance, one of the ways of doing so is, can you exist? Can the company continue without that individual? Some people, it affects the company, but not much. Some people actually are a burden on the company. And then there are some individuals that basically, without that individual and their expertise, their knowledge, their experience, and so on, the company cannot survive. So that's one of the ways of how we assess the value, the critical importance of an entity, a being, a organism, and so on, a limb. So when it comes to the Jewish people, there's a lot of important dynamics, events, occurrences that is what makes up the beauty of our people. But the most important critical component of who we are is the Torah. Regardless of how religious you are, how observant you are, how traditional you are, and so on, it all centers around the Torah. There could be many layers to an onion, and then there's the core. The core all comes from the fact that we were given a Torah. That's what defines us as a Jew, defines us as a people. Some are closer to that core, observe, and their life is more part of the core, is more part of their day-to-day life, but that's who we are. Otherwise, we are not a people, we don't have a nation, we don't have a country, we don't have nothing. So Shavuot, the holiday that begins tonight, celebrates the day that God gave us the Torah, the Ten Commandments. So it's important to realize that and understand and appreciate. Ironically, from the 3 pilgrimage holidays or the 5 biblical holidays, which will include also Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, In some ways, the one least known, at least by those who are less observant, is the holiday of Shavuot, even though it's one of the three pilgrimage holidays, like Passover, like Sukkot, when we sit in the Sukkah, and Shavuot, which is the day we will receive the Torah, is somewhat less known in, I guess, circles that are a little more distant from their Jewish values or Jewish traditions and so on, Jewish knowledge, Jewish study and learning, although it is the most critical, as mentioned, because if not for this day, we wouldn't have not Rosh Hashanah, and not Yom Kippur, and not Hanukkah, and not Purim, and not gefilte fish, and then etc., etc. And not latkes, whatever else is your favorite dish, cholent, and so on. So, having said that, on the other hand, perhaps the reason why there is no specific mitzvah on Shavuos, meaning Passover, you have matzah, you have the prohibition of eating leavened bread, sourdough, you have the mitzvah of telling the story, and you have the customs and halachot, the 4 cups, and so on. Sukkot, we have the biblical mitzvah of sitting in the sukkah. Shavuot, there's no particular mitzvah other than it's like Shabbat, where it's forbidden to work, but there's no specific mitzvah. And perhaps the reason for that is because it celebrates our core, it doesn't have a particular expression, although customs have developed over the years. But in terms of biblical observance, there's no particular mitzvah because it encompasses all and everything. So that's a somewhat introduction into the holiday of Shavuot that we are celebrating. Now, I do want to go a little deeper. I want to go a little deeper because, part of the challenge, and to each of us on our level, is that when certain things are taken for granted, or even certain things that are part of our core, unfortunately, sometimes we pay less attention to making sure that it finds expression in our more sort of conscious self or our more regular behavior. So, for example, sometimes it could be a bigger challenge. It could be a bigger challenge to show your love and care to your own family, to your own children, to your spouse, because it's part of your core and because it's somewhat part of it. You take it for granted and it's part of your core. So you don't invest the effort or allow it to express itself as something that is not so taken for granted and so naturally one with you. So that sometimes can be sort of the reverse challenge. And this also happens, of course, with our connection to Torah and to Jewish observance, which on the one hand, every single one of us, it is part of our core, regardless of level of observance. But it is precisely for that reason that sometimes it finds less expression and less commitment and less making effort into bringing that forth in our daily, regular, conscious behavior. So, a lot of these things is based on perspective. So there is a statement in Parshat Ve'et Hanan, to run here a little deeper in just explaining sort of the basis of Shavuot and its importance and how it should find its effect and expression. So after God gives us the 10 Commandments, which we received on Shavuot, the Torah in Deuteronomy expresses God's voice in the following way. The Torah says, Kol Gadol, we heard a great voice, Velo Yasaf. That's the language the Torah uses, Yasaf, Yud, Samach, and Fei. Now, what does Velo Yasaf mean? Now, Yasaf is related to the word Hosafa, and Rashi tells us, Lo Yasaf. So Rashi gives 2 explanations. One explanation, Rashi says, Velo Yasaf, Velo Pasak. It was not interrupted. It did not stop. The other Pirush Velo Yasaf means that it did not continue. But the first explanation that Rashi gives is Velo Pasak, it did not stop. Now, what does that mean? What does that mean that God's voice giving us the 10 Commandments did not stop? The Medrash tells us various interpretations or explanations of what does that mean it did not stop. Velo Pasak can mean it did not stop, is that nothing blocked the voice. It penetrated everything and wherever. It did not stop in space, that nothing can block the voice from penetrating the entire universe. And there's more insight into this. I'm giving the shorter version. Or velo pasak, the Medrash says, means for all of history. Every single time we sit down and study Torah, or we hear a scholar, a Torah scholar teaching Torah, it is a continuation of that powerful, holy, godly voice. Torah is not just an intellectual pursuit, it's a godly connection, a godly voice communicating to us. Velo pasak, that voice continues. And on that vein, I want to relate it on a personal level. Velo pasak, there's a Bavusta vort, there's a Bavusta little anecdote story with the, I believe it was the Gerer Rebbe and the Kotzker Rebbe. Ger, famous, known, large Hasidic dynasty that exists throughout the world and headquartered in Israel, was a student of the Kotzker Rebbe, was a very sharp and holy individual. And he once asked his student, the Gerer Rebbe, he asked his student, "Where is God?" So he answered, "Where is God? God is everywhere." He says, "No, that's not what I'm looking for." He continued to ask him, "Where is God?" And whatever he answered, some of the typical answers, he said, "No, that's not satisfied with that." So he finally said, "Okay, I give up. Rebbe, where is God?" And the Rebbe answered, "God is wherever you let him in." Some of the most difficult place for God, for Torah to penetrate is within ourselves. Meaning we know of Torah, we believe in Torah, but velo pasak, it is not blocked. There's one place that we have the choice where the Torah and the continuing, penetrating, holy, beautiful guidance, inspiration, depth, God connecting voice of Torah continues, but we have the choice whether it should be allowed to penetrate within ourselves in our daily, regular thinking and how we respond and react and educate our kinderlach, elevate ourselves, inspire ourselves. You know, I was just thinking, it was just a personal thought I had about sort of penetrating and perspective. It's just a little bit, taking a little bit of a detour, but it's relevant over here somewhat. I was thinking about this because I remember a couple of years ago, I was listening to some little clip of a comedian. I don't remember his name. And he was talking about the fact that when we're flying and we're 36 or 38,000 feet in the air and our reclining seat is not working properly, that we get all frustrated and we want to refund our ticket, whatever it is. And this particular comedian, in his comedic way, was conveying sort of this truth that, for God's sake, you are 38,000 feet in the air. Could you imagine what kind of a scientific, amazing thing is? And you're flying and you're getting to your destination and you have your drinks and you have your and what's the problem is that your seat is not reclining. You know, he was sort of making fun and highlighting that fact that we don't really appreciate what we have. And sometimes one little thing goes wrong and we go meshuggah. And I was thinking also the other way around, you know, conversely. I mean, I was once traveling from Israel back here to the United States, and because of my mother, and this is the year of her avelut, the year of her passing, and you know, I did a little extra traveling on this particular airline, and as a result of the sort of the status that I had, so I was waiting, already getting on the plane, you know, on the bridge that you get to the plane, and and one of the attendants, comes over and says, "Is your name so-and-so? Is your name Abraham Friedman?" I said, "Yes. Who would you like to be upgraded into first class?" Yeah, who doesn't want, especially on an international flight, who doesn't want to be upgraded into first class? So I get into first class and wow, I think this was my first time. I'm quite certain it was my first time international travel first class. And I was like a little child in I don't know, in an ice cream store or whatever it is. You know, that I was so playing with the buttons, the seat is going up and the seat is going down and you can lay down flat. And I was thinking to myself, conversely, here this comedian is talking about the fact that the seat is not reclining and you go meshuggah, and how amazing, you're in the middle of the air, you're flying in comfort, safety, and so on and so forth. And I was thinking the other way around. Let's say here I'm so excited I could put the seat, laying down flat, and I'm in seventh heaven over here, as they say, no pun intended. And if I had that kind of space in my house, my bedroom was this little chair that electronically could lay down, and I have this little cubicle, I'd be miserable. What kind of bedroom is this? What kind of comfort space is this? But here on the airplane, I was in seventh heaven. So it tells you how the human brain works. To apply it to our discussion over here, so that we can have an important Shavuos message. We are very much our perspective and the things we fill our brain with. We are fortunate. We are so blessed that we have the greatest treasure that God gave us, which is the Torah, which we celebrate during the holiday of Shavuot. Fill our brain with it. So when we have blessings and we have challenges and we have questions on perspective and values and how to raise our children and how to make our world a better world and how to make our community a better community, the Torah enriches us and connects us to our Creator and guides us in the purpose and mission of our soul and so on. It is a wonderful blessing. So while we are all equally connected at our core to this gift that God gave each and every one of us, it's important that we allow it to below pasak, that it doesn't reach only sort of our outer superficial dimension, and it doesn't impact us on a deeper, more penetrating sort of level. That's where our challenge comes in. Below pasak, it was not interrupted. That's our choice that we make. And on Shavuos, we have that blessing and that koach to make the resolution. Every single day we need to connect to Torah. Today there's such abundance. Talking about velo pasak also could mean there's no limit. Today the amount of Torah and different approaches to Torah and different teachers and different levels and different styles, it is so vast. It's incredible. And then so many platforms. Imagine having an amazing treasure and you just don't appreciate it, you don't use it. What a waste. So today on Shavuos, I want to give all of us, including myself, a blessing that our connection and appreciation and absorption of Torah should enter a new level, a much higher level, in honor of the holiday of Shavuos, in a way that we also shared with our kinderlach and grandchildren, for those of us who have bubbies and zaydis. It's so important in today's confused world. Let us connect them with Eitz Chayim Hi. It's a tree of life. Machazikim Ba, as many of you know, there's also many, although it's not the Chabad custom, but there's the beautiful custom in many synagogues that you put out flowers and trees into the shul, into the synagogues on Shavuos. May Hashem bless us that we should connect to the Eitz Chayim Hi. It's a tree of life, in a real and penetrating and beautiful way to enhance both our life, our kinderlach's life, community life, to fulfill our purpose and mission in this world as well, to bring holiness, godliness, the wisdom of Hashem, the creator of this world, down into our world. May we do so with great joy, with great absorption, inner absorption, in a beautiful and happy and joyous and meaningful way. Have a wonderful Chag. I also do want to say there's the reading of the 10 Commandments that happens tomorrow morning. Everybody's invited. The Rebbe would encourage that we should bring the children. So every single child that's listening, please, or parent that has kinderlach, please bring your children. Let's say here at Chabad Coral Springs, there are minyanim the entire morning that there will be of the 10 Commandments. There's also a minyan at 5:30 in the afternoon that you could then, there will also be ice cream and cheesecake, just to make it a little more exciting. As they say, right? Every Jewish holiday, they wanted to kill us, let's eat. So we won, let's eat. In this case, Shavuos has nothing to, it has something to do with they wanted to kill us, because it is part of the journey of the Exodus from Egypt. But yes, hope to see you. Have a fantastic and wonderful Chag.